All right. Hi, Verena.
Hi, Renee.
So tell us, what was your background and starting point when you joined the Learning Club? What did you already know about data science, and what type of work had you done before?
I was finishing my master's degree in bioinformatics when I joined the Learning Club.
Bioinformatics?
Sorry?
Bioinformatics?
Yes, bioinformatics. The master's degree focused on data science and machine learning. So I had some background knowledge when I started in the Learning Club.
Okay, and have you worked as a data scientist before?
I started last April to work part-time in a company as a data scientist, and since I finished my degree in February, I'm working full-time.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I think you joined in December, like as soon as I started the Learning Club. So
yeah,
what caught your attention? And yeah, why did you want to join in?
I think I saw your tweet about the Learning Club, and I thought it was a good idea. It was some kind of different format for learning new things. And also during my studies, I always wanted to learn new things. I sat down in the evenings and watched video lectures or read books. And I thought this was a new kind of format to learn new things and talk to other people who want to learn similar things.
Okay, so in general, how has it gone, and how has it compared to your other experiences with online learning?
I think it's you create very interesting lectures. They are all very different. So if I don't like one activity so much, I can do the next one. And I think it's easy to get into the topics because there are several background information and that we can use to sometimes I just use books to get more background information, and it's more encouraging to continue with the activities than, for example, lectures I did, because there are other people and you talk to them, and in the video lectures you're usually alone and you don't know what the others are up to, and yeah, you also can compare your results.
Yeah, you've been really good about posting your code and your results, and I know that you've been doing it on a blog too. So what have you gained from showing your approach? I mean, definitely other people have gained from seeing what you do, but what have you gained from blogging about it and giving the details of your approach?
Yeah, it's nice. Sometimes you get comments from people that you could do something differently, so you learn something. And I think that documenting it, whether it's on a blog or just on your computer, it helps you to understand what you did and remember what you did. And if you look at the results and something is not clear, you can just go back and check. Maybe you did something wrong. And that, yeah, you can only do it if you really document it very well.
So what are some specific things that you've learned through the Learning Club and new tools that you've picked up?
Yeah, I saw the podcast that you did with Will Kurt, and he recommended R Markdown, which is an R package that is, the syntax is very similar to the normal Markdown, and you can use it to automatically include code and plots in your documentation, and it generates HTML or PDFs. So this is one thing that I started using. And I also found time to start using ggplot, which is a very nice plotting library in R. Yeah, I also tried Jupyter because you and some other people on the club use it. Yeah, that's about it.
And you're very good at presenting your results. So is that something that you wanted to practice coming in, and how to present the results of your analysis?
Yeah, at university we were always, for the homework, we had to do also the documentation, what we did with the data, and do plots and comparisons and things like that. But I think that one can always improve on this. And I also see it sometimes at work that if you start with a project that someone else did and the documentation is missing or not very good, that you have a really hard time to understand what's going on. So I think that That's a very important part.
Great. So about how many different activities do you think you've participated in, and what was your favorite?
I think in the beginning I participated in every activity, so maybe in the first 4. And I also did the linear regression one. It was, I think, number 7. I think I like this best because I also have to do a lot of regression at work. So I knew the theoretical parts behind it, but I really wanted to get to know the R package. LM is a very well-known R method, and it's very powerful for linear regression. And I think that now I know almost everything about this. And I also created an R Markdown report to show all the results. And yeah, I think that was my favorite activity so far.
So tell us about the type of data that you used there and the results that you got.
For this activity, I used the salary dataset. It has features like gender, rank, years in this current position, and the salary. And you should use linear regression to find out whether you can predict the salary from all the other features. And I think it was interesting because there were some categorical values like rank and gender. And in linear regression, you usually use numerical values. But if you have something like categorical values, then it creates per categorical value a new model. And so it was really interesting to see that I think in the end that one feature was enough to get the best output. So I tried several combinations of features and also did some manual feature selections based on the plots that I created. And then it was interesting to see that one feature was better than a combination of several features.
And which feature was that?
I don't remember. I think it was the rank, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it's neat to discover these things and just be able to play around. So yeah, that's why I created the Learning Club, just to have a chance to try these things out.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to also thank you for the work that you've done to help others in the Learning Club. You've really been active in terms of participating in conversation, and when people ask for help, you always jump in. So what motivates you to do that, and what have you gained from helping others?
Yeah, I think it's fun to help others, and if you see the questions that other people have, you can understand more about the methods. You can understand what might not be so easy to understand. I'm not sure if that makes sense. But I also did some mentoring at university, so correcting assignments from other people and helping them, and I also like this a lot. So you can sometimes you even learn new things because people that have a different background have other ideas, other approaches, and you might not have thought about this, even if you don't know if you have used R more than 3 years, you still get to see a lot of new things.
Yeah, I think that's great, because I think some people come into the Learning Club and they see, advanced users doing advanced things, and they're a little worried that, I'm a beginner, I can't do it that way yet. But to see that the advanced users are learning as well just by practicing. But then also advanced users come in and say, well, these are kind of beginner activities. I've already done this stuff.
Yeah.
But to know that no matter where you are along the spectrum, you can gain from it.
That's why I started to use R Markdown with the linear regression exercise, because I knew linear regression, but I just wanted to do it properly and also do everything around the linear regression, checking out the coefficients and doing nice plots and everything.
That's great. Thank you. So you mentioned that you have some other resources and books that you use to supplement your learning. So do you have any specific ones that you want to recommend to people starting out?
Last Christmas, I got a nice present. It's Practical Data Analysis, I think, or Practical Data Analytics. It's a really great book. It's not R specific, but it describes everything like PCA and regression and everything. I also used it to study for my exam. And I also have the book Practical Data Science with R. I won it from your competition last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's similar, but it's really more practical. So you don't find a theoretical background in there. but really find, for example, how to do a correlation plot or something. And it also has helped me, for example, with exercise 5, that was the naive Bayes. Therefore, I used this book because I haven't known naive Bayes before this exercise, so that was helpful for me.
Great. And also, thank you for sharing all the additional resources that you find. You always add links to the ones that I add. So since I'm coming from a Python side, you always help with the R links. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope it's useful.
Definitely. All right. Well, anything that you want to say to wrap up?
Now that it went quick. Maybe a hint for new users or beginners. I think it's important to always be curious and try to learn new things. So even to me and to you and everyone who has some experience, it happens every day that you find new things that you don't know about, and you just have to watch videos or read something about it, and then you will understand it maybe in a few days or whatever, how complicated the topic is.
Great. So and tell everyone listening how they can find you online and find your blog.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I'm also on the other social media, but with respect to data science, Twitter is my most used platform. So just look for my name. It's Verena Haunschmid. Maybe we should write it somewhere. And my website is called blog.haunschmid.name.
Okay, great. I will link to both of those. And if you send me the link to the first book that you mentioned, I'll also include that so people can find your resources.
Yeah, great.
So thanks so much for talking to us today.
Thanks. Bye.
Hi, David.
Hi, Renee.
So how did you find the Data Science Learning Club, and why did you want to get involved?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this, and I just could not remember how I found it initially. When I joined, it was very much at its start. So I think the podcast was only a couple of days old. So I reckon I must have just Googled how do I become a data scientist and found your blog.
And did you find what you were expecting? When you logged on, what were you? It couldn't have been much at the time, so
no, it was just, I mean, it was your first episode, and you talked about what you want from the Learning Club.
Okay.
And it sort of came at a great time for me because I was kind of a few months into a master's program, and I thought it'd be a great way to supplement my studies and find some other people around the world who are kind of on this journey at the same time. So I was just excited about hopefully getting a crowd of people there to work with or to study alongside.
Okay, great. So what was your educational background before you started this master's program in data science?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people come into data science from all sorts of scientific backgrounds. I'm actually the opposite. I've come in from a tech background. So my undergraduate degree was actually in computer games programming, which was great because it made me fall in love with programming, which was very useful. I ended up not going into the games industry. I became a regular software developer, whatever that is. And so I've got the technical background. I've been programming for 5 years plus my degree, so nearly 10 years now. And actually in my first job, I was in a relatively small IT team. And that usually means that you kind of have to do all sorts of things in the business. And I ended up doing business intelligence, which was something I wasn't qualified for or anything. It was just something that had to be done. So that just kind of meant taking like business questions, or what I call like human questions about the business, like how are we doing this quarter? Who are our most profitable clients? That kind of thing, and turning them into database queries.
And did you teach yourself SQL, or what were you learning at that point?
Pretty much the first thing I had to do at that job was go away and learn SQL and come back in 2 days and tell us all about joins and the basics of SQL. So that's kind of what I did in my first week, was just learn SQL from scratch, and then just learned it as I went along.
That's great. And I actually come from a business intelligence background too. So it's interesting that it seems like a lot of people in data science don't have that, the query skills and the database knowledge about how databases work. So has that in particular added to your data science learning?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually. A lot of people on my course are because my course doesn't cover SQL or databases explicitly. We just kind of work with CSV files and just kind of do what you can. So a lot of people are kind of, when the course is over, they're planning to go away and learn SQL in their spare time. So it's definitely an advantage. I mean, I came into the course as well with the programming and the database background.
So what made you want to switch from doing business intelligence and games programming into data science?
Yeah, so I was making web applications. That was my main job, which I really liked, and I got to do a lot of programming. But the whole business intelligence, turning real like human questions into kind of tech and database queries, that's the bit that really stuck with me. And I kind of just wanted to formalize the knowledge that I had, because a lot of what I did was ad hoc, and I was just kind of, I had some training in the software that we used, but that was about it. And then the rest was kind of learn as I went along. And a lot of it was so kind of ad hoc that I wanted, some formal education on the topic of, how do you actually use databases properly? How do you actually turn data into insights, and, all these things that data science does. And so in my spare time, I kind of looked at MOOCs. I did like some courses on Coursera and Udacity and things, just to make sure that this is the kind of direction I want to go in. And when I kind of realized that, yeah, data science is really exciting and that's what I want to do, then I decided to go and do a master's.
Great. So for other people that are coming from a similar background, what have been the difficult pieces in the master's program for you?
It was definitely the maths. I mean, my games programming course was actually quite mathematical, because a lot of the physics simulations and things that we have to do involve a lot of maths, especially linear algebra. So that kind of came in handy, but it was very rusty. So it was definitely the maths that was the kind of learning curve for me.
So how have you overcome that, and what are some good resources for people that also need to overcome that challenge?
Yeah, we had a machine learning module in the first semester, and it sort of, the first day started with all sorts of probability theory that I just could not remember. So that was quite a shock. But my favorite resource really to get sort of up to speed was definitely Khan Academy, and I think people have mentioned it on your podcast already, but I can't stress enough how useful it's been for me. And I don't know if it'll be useful for everybody, but the way Sal Khan talks about things, it just really resonates with me. He kind of explains it in a non-mathematical way first, and then brings the maths and kind of eases you in. And maths is not something I like to be thrown in at the deep end. I like to be kind of gently introduced to these complex formulas.
Mm-hmm. And I'm similar, and I was the same way. I thought of Khan Academy as something that helps people like in high school or in undergrad. I didn't realize how advanced it gets, and there's really some master's level, computational and calculation, advanced math, linear algebra, all kinds of stuff on Khan Academy.
Yeah, and interestingly, I think the amount, or the number of topics you need to know for data science is not actually that much. If you know some linear algebra, some probability, some statistics, maybe some calculus, if you want to really dive into it, then that's kind of all you need. And it's not a trivial amount. Like, it's a lot of stuff to know, but it's not a lot of topics. Mm-hmm. And Khan Academy seems to cover all of them. So yeah, I think just to get the basics and sort of refresh them, it's enough.
Great. So what have you gained from the Data Science Learning Club, and tell us how you use it in conjunction with your master's program?
Yeah, I just wanted it to kind of supplement my studies, and kind of, because I knew that alongside my studies, I want to do some mini projects just to kind of keep practicing. And I'm usually terrible at coming up with my own projects, so I was kind of looking around to see if somebody had suggestions on what kind of little things I could do. And Learning Club was perfect for that, because it was like bite-sized exercises, specifically in the machine learning sections where the kind of algorithms we were doing as part of the course. So the way I used it was, I actually went and implemented them all from scratch in Python, just to kind of practice Python, as well as make sure that I understand all the algorithms. And for every one that I did, I realized that there were little details that I hadn't understood. So conceptually I understood, I don't know, naive Bayes and clustering and all these things. But when you implement it, you can't kind of be wishy-washy with it. You have to know exactly how it's implemented. And that's where there were some details that I realized I didn't know. And then those came in really handy.
Yeah, so when people look at your Learning Club exercises, they can see that, you're already coming with some knowledge of the machine learning concepts, but you're really diving in and doing them from scratch instead of using packages.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
And you're one of the participants that's using Python. So for people that aren't familiar with it, do you encourage brand new learners to use Python?
Yeah, I think Python's fantastic. It's a great entry point into programming as well. When I did my undergraduate degree, my programming was all in C++, which is quite a heavy thing to learn when you've never done any programming. And it did scare quite a few people away. I mean, there were I think about 70 of us started the course and about 14 finished.
Whoa.
So it was an enormous dropout.
Yeah.
A lot of it was because people thought they were just going to be playing games, but a lot of it was also the programming. So Python, I think, is definitely much nicer, cleaner, a way to kind of get, because because a lot of programming that I did was in C#, which is also kind of, I really like it as a language, but there's also a lot you need to do to get started. You can't just start a blank canvas and start typing code. There's all sorts of other details you have to configure, and kind of this big framework of things that sit there before you can write any kind of hello world type code. Whereas Python, you can just type 20 characters and you've got something that works.
Yeah, that's great. So you've had some unique data science learning club projects. Some use some data that was personal to you. So tell us about how you came up with that and what you learned.
I'm just trying to think what I did for my activities. I did one that was about the London Underground.
So that was the one I meant, the transportation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the transportation one. That's personal to me because I take the tube every day. And I've always wanted to kind of find out about it from a data perspective. So yeah, I just kind of looked at how the usage is kind of spread out during the year with all the different lines. It was quite underwhelming, actually. I thought I'd find some really insightful things, but it was just people use a lot of public transportation all the time, except around Christmas, where they don't use that much.
Did the results reflect your actual experiences, using the tube?
Yeah, I think my actual experiences are very subjective, because it can be, if anyone listening has ever taken the tube in London, especially at rush hour, it can be quite a traumatic experience. So I think the subjective views of it are different from the actual. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people use it, so it's just generally very busy, and that's pretty much what the data showed.
So was there anything that might make you change your behaviors in terms of times of day, or what questions were you asking, and what analysis did you do?
Yeah, I mean, I guess secretly I was hoping I could find some loophole and find some like specific times where I could take the tube and avoid the chaos. But I think that the problem is everybody goes to work at around about the same time, and everybody leaves work around about the same time. So unless you can be flexible, you're pretty much stuck with with the rush hour.
And you said you've done some machine learning projects, so tell us about one or two of those.
Do you mean on my course or as part of the Learning Club?
Yeah, both.
So for the Learning Club, the thing that I wanted to do on my course, never got around to it, was to do with k-means clustering. And the textbook we used was a Chris Bishop's textbook, which is quite a maths heavy, quite a chunky text.
The pattern recognition and machine learning.
That's the one, exactly.
Yeah, we used the same one.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's pretty common. And he does a thing with k-means clustering in his book where he takes pictures of his children and then looks at all the pixel values and then does clustering on them, so that he redraws the pictures with only 2 or 3 colors. I thought that's a really fun thing to do, so I did that as part of my Learning Club activity, and that was really fun. And it's a really good way to kind of showcase what's happening and visualize it.
Yeah, that was a really neat one, and I'll definitely link to that in the show notes so people can take a look at what you did. So to wrap up, what advice do you have for new learners, and what have you really gained from participating and interacting with others in the Learning Club?
Yeah, I think my general advice for people is just to come and join the Learning Club. I mean, I don't think you need anything. There's no prerequisites. I think we're all at different levels, and I'm sure a lot of people have come in and this is maybe their first exposure to data science. And I think if you can't do it with real people in real life, then the next best thing is to do it with people online. At least if you're the kind of learner that I am, I learn much better when I've got other people in the same boat and I can kind of share my ups and downs with them.
Yeah, me too.
I would just say, just get stuck in and say hi.
So what have you gained? Is it, for me, I like that it makes me more accountable. Of course, I haven't done activities in a while myself, so I need to jump back in. But, how has your experience been with the Learning Club, and, what have you personally gained that you wouldn't have otherwise?
No, absolutely. It's a very good point. The accountability. I think I've always said I want to kind of build up a portfolio as I do the course. And I think if it wasn't for the Learning Club, I'd have less to show because, like I said, it's kind of harder to come up with projects, and it's much better when there's something with kind of, artificial deadlines to keep you on track. And obviously, like you, I've kind of I'm a couple of activities behind now, but for the most part, it kind of keeps you focused on always having the next thing that you want to learn over time. So it's definitely been great for me, I think, to come up with little bits that I can add to my portfolio at the end. So I would encourage people to join just for that as well.
Yeah, and about saying that we're behind, one thing I always tell myself, there's actually a blog about cleaning your house, and it's called Fly Lady, I think. I read it a long time ago. And one thing she always emphasized is that with something like this, you're never behind. You just jump in wherever you're at. Stop telling yourself you're behind and you have to catch up. So I have to keep telling myself that even though it's my own learning club and I'm putting the activities up, and I feel like, oh my gosh, I haven't had any time lately to dive in there and do the projects that the way it's set up, it's asynchronous, so anyone can dive in at any time, try something out. Maybe you need to go off and learn some more and come back, or maybe you already know more and you could start at a later activity. So I wanted to encourage people, like you said, people at all levels are in the Learning Club, and to encourage people not to feel behind and to just jump in where you are. So would you agree? Is it set up in a way that is conducive to that?
Oh, completely. And I think the good thing is that the activities don't all like flow from each other. So if you want to do activity 7 because it speaks to you more than the others, then you can just dive straight into that. So there's no requisite path that you have to take through them. So I think that makes it more accessible because, if you look at all of them and go, oh, actually, I want to do web scraping, which I think is the latest activity, you could just go and do that straight away. So I think it leaves it open-ended. So you can kind of, if you want, you can follow along with everybody and every few weeks actually get a specific project done. But if you just want to dive in and do some random things, you can do that as well. Definitely.
Okay. And how can people find you online, David, if they want to follow up?
I think I've been quite busy revising for exams recently, so my internet presence has been next to zero recently, but I'm usually quite active on Twitter, so it's just at David Asboth. I also have a website which is at the moment very poorly maintained, but there's some of the stuff on there. It's davidasboth.com. That's where my data science portfolio is going in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So if people want to keep an eye out for me online, that's where to do it. Twitter is pretty much where I hang out.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for joining us and for the advice and participating in the Learning Club.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for facilitating it.
Great. Bye.
Bye.
Right. Hi, Kerry.
Hey, Renee.
So let's start with, how did you find out about the Data Science Learning Club and what made you want to join?
Well, after months of really trying to get a hold of data science, I pretty much started in January on my own to be on my own self-directed journey. And I just kind of started looking out for different guides and resources about how to learn. And the Becoming a Data Scientist blog came up, and I eventually found the forum as well. So I thought, this was absolutely perfect. This is what I needed. So considering how friendly everything looked and how well designed the challenges looked as well, I just thought it was perfect for me. So I decided it's going to help, and I decided to come aboard.
Great. So what was your starting point prior to starting with the Data Science Learning Club? Had you taken any classes before or practiced much data science yet?
I was probably just a few weeks in when I started the Data Science Learning Club. So maybe like 3 to 4 weeks of data science through data camp and maybe 1 or 2 written tutorials. But other than that, I pretty much came in with next to nothing.
Okay, great. So you were really a beginner. And this was back in about January, right? Okay.
Yep.
So tell us about the activities you've participated in and how did that go?
So far I participated in activity 1 and 2. Those were fun for me, especially activity 2. More or less, for activity 2, I searched through I searched through the web to see what data set would be the most interesting for me, and I realized that since I have a passion and interest in video games, I would find the data set related to that. Had scraped the website IGN for game reviews they did since they began up until about 2014, and they hosted it on Reddit. So that was absolutely perfect. So I downloaded that, and I decided to explore, visualize, and see what I can find out of that. So that ended up being activity 1 and 2.
Cool. So what tools did you use?
So I used R and the packages depiler and Excel Connect, which is just supposed to make loading Excel files a bit easier. Oh, and ggplot too, of course.
Okay, and what did you learn from that activity? What were the findings?
So the findings were pretty interesting and fun. The first hypothesis that I had really is that I subsetted the data that I had because since it covered virtually every gaming console from the beginning of IGN up until 2014, it was a lot. So I subsetted the data to just focus on what's considered the current generation, which was the PS4, the Xbox One, and the Wii U. My hypothesis was that the Xbox One would have the highest have the highest ratings within maybe a 9 to 10 category, and more or less that the genre of action would probably be the highest rated genre for the platform. But it's after the analysis, more or less, it seemed that the Wii U actually had, at the time, the Wii U had the highest scores overall, then followed by the PS4, and then followed by the Xbox One. And for each genre, for each system, it was broken down into the Wii U had the highest among platformer and action. The PS4 had similar, it was more closer to the role-playing games and action, and Xbox One was just like action overall. So action was a common theme for all the current generation of systems. It's just that where it went as opposed to like who got the highest score was off for me. But that was actually still a fun thing because it's like the main theme of data science, right? You come up with a hypothesis, you see if it's correct or not. If it's not, you find out why, what's possible, what's not. Keep digging further, see what you keep finding. It's like you go in with the purpose to keep learning until eventually you're satisfied or you find the truth, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, definitely. And you've been blogging about your Data Science Learning Club activities in addition to doing the forum posts. So tell us about your blogging experience and what kind of reaction have you gotten?
Well, I want to make sure that I want to keep myself accountable when I start learning data science. So after a few days of kind of debating with myself, I started in January, which is the official starting time for me learning data science. And it's been an interesting journey so far, mainly due to the fact that besides being able to outsource essentially what I've learned and keep a little record to see how I'm improving, I've actually gotten a lot of positive reactions from it. One that I clearly remember was from a woman who was international, who basically wrote like the nicest response ever, which basically said that they were scared about approaching data science for the longest, mainly because they believed that everyone who was in data science was already an expert. But she said after coming across my blog, they realized that not everyone has to be in order to start, because I essentially definitely wasn't. And I just kind of threw myself in there. And she basically said it kind of inspired her that maybe she should do something similar, that she should just throw herself into the field as well, see what she can learn, and just not be afraid to just be a part of everything.
That's awesome. So what kind of experiences have you had outside of the Data Science Learning Club? I know that you had said you've been to some meetups, and you also are using Data Camp. So what are some great resources that you can recommend for other beginners?
Well, in terms of resources, obviously Data Camp, that's the first one that I found. interestingly enough, about 2 weeks ago, I published an article on my blog that was titled "How Getting Started in Data Science from a Beginner's Perspective." So essentially, I pulled from my experience and the huge amount of bookmarks I collected, virtually all the resources I think that would be good enough for you to start, with the intent to make people know that, well, you don't have to be an expert to start off, and this field could be accessible. The main thing is that once you have one or two tools, whether it be a spreadsheet or R or Python, and you have an idea, you can just go ahead and get started. So other resources that I've used, and I also include on the blog, was a website called Sharp Site Labs, which I especially like because it's very beginner friendly, not too much emphasis on heavy prerequisites, no calculus, no linear algebra, nothing that might shun people away who maybe are not too technical in the beginning or don't come from a stats or math background. Well, Udacity and basically other like edX and Coursera, they also have good courses as well. More or less, there's out there. And if you're also a beginner in data science, I think my last blog post might be a good starting spot for you, finding out how to start off.
Okay, and I'll definitely link to that blog post. But how can people find it? So we have it in the audio. Tell us your URL.
So to find where my blog is hosted, it's medium.com/the-data.logs. That's the easiest. It's the second to most recent article that I published, so it'll definitely be really, really easy for you to find.
Okay, great, and we'll make sure to link to that. So I found you on Twitter and connected with you there. What other experiences have you had connecting with people on Twitter?
It's been great. Like virtually, I've been in tech for a while, but mainly in non-technical roles. But I've managed to meet a great and interesting variety of people through Twitter. And the data science community has been some of the nicest and friendliest set of people that I've ever encountered. Like almost everyone has been really helpful when you have questions, especially if you use certain hashtags. Like if you're within the R community, if you use hashtag #RStats whenever you have an R-related question, that's definitely an easy way for someone to find you and get help. For data science overall, just hashtag data science. And most of everyone's been really helpful and really kind of there to make sure that you are not completely lost on the journey. So it's been nice. It feels very anti-jerk-like for the 6 months I've been here.
Well, that's great to hear. So before we started, you showed me your t-shirt. So if you could show everyone your t-shirt and tell us the story there, and then also wrap up with any final advice you have for beginners.
Sure. So I volunteered at my first data science conference in April. It was the New York R conference, ironically enough. And so I got this bigger than big data t-shirt by the nice people over at Microsoft.
Nice. So any final words for other beginners, or advice from somebody that's just recently gone through the same startup?
So for anyone else who's beginning in the Data Science Learning Club or in data science overall, just know that the main thing is that you don't have to go it completely alone. There are definitely communities that you can go to. There's definitely people on Twitter that you can reach out to. There is always that one person who is willing to help. And it does make a load of difference between what you learn on your own as opposed to, it makes a difference to what you learn on your own. Definitely know that they're there. And the other thing that I want to make sure to let people know is that data science could be accessible. Yes, it's interdisciplinary, and depending on what you want to do and how far you want to go, you might need the higher levels of math and statistics, machine learning, whatever have you. But just to get started, you really don't need it. If you have one tool and some form of interest in whatever kind of data you want to collect, and you just put in the time to just kind of really getting your hands dirty, seeing what you find, seeing what's wrong, and questioning, just kind of being like a good detective and scientist to just question, see what you find, play, break things, and repeat the process over and over. You can just get started, and you don't have to worry about too much after that. And from there, you can just kind of see where you can plot your journey after that. If you feel like you need to be better in statistics, then there are resources for that. Math, whatever case have you. Just make sure that you get in there and you get your hands dirty first. Don't overwhelm yourself with too much theoretical things in the beginning.
Well, that's great. And I hope that the Data Science Learning Club is a great place to do that and dive in. So thanks for talking with us, Kerry. And I really hope that others can find us the way you did and experience the same quick growth that you have.
Thanks. The Data Science Learning Club has definitely been a big help to making sure that I'm at least guided for when I started. Otherwise, I'm not sure where I would be right now.
Well, great to hear. And thanks so much for talking with us today.
Not a problem.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Anthony.
Hello. Hi, Renee.
So first, let me ask you, what was your background before joining the Data Science Learning Club? You know, what was your educational background, and had you done data science type of projects before?
Right. So actually, most of my educational background is in the life sciences, so I had no kind of formal data science coursework other than one bioinformatics class in a graduate program that I did. So my undergrad was in molecular biology, and I did a graduate program in biotechnology. And again, only one component of one course that I took was a bioinformatics course. So not too much in an academic setting as far as the data science coursework, but yeah.
So how did you find out about the Learning Club, and what made you want to join?
So definitely, so a lot of the tools that I've learned relating to data science have all been kind of in my personal time, so outside of work, and I try to find different ways of incorporating data tools such as like relational databases and SQL, and trying to tie that into work. But a lot of that has come from my personal, in my personal time and doing personal research. And so the way that ties into how I came across the Data Science Learning Club was I started listening to podcasts a lot over the last year. And I did a iTunes search of data science. I figured, hey, I can, in my free time, I can listen to what's out there, and any podcasts that are potentially out there. And the top one was the Becoming a Data Scientist podcast. So that's how I first heard about it.
I didn't know I was top.
Yeah, it was the first thing that came up. And yeah.
So what have you done so far in the Learning Club? What kind of activities have you done, and what have you learned from that?
Yeah, so I joined fairly late. So this was in early April, and by then I believe the club started sometime in November or December. So I did have a period of just a lot of catching up to do. But I want to say, going into it, one of the topics that I hadn't touched at all going into the Data Science Learning Club was machine learning. And I know it's a pretty popular one, but that's just one of those areas that I hadn't even touched at all. And so I was excited to see that I think a few assignments were relating to machine learning. And so that's definitely one of the topics that I've, some of the k-means clustering, there was a k-means clustering assignment, and just as an example of one topic that I was able to learn more about. And one way to sort of illustrate, I guess, how much I've learned over the last couple of months in that topic is that I'm comfortable now to at least participate in some of the Kaggle competitions that are going on right now. And I wouldn't have even known where to start if you would have asked me another, 4 or 5 months ago. So for me, that's a personal accomplishment.
That's great.
But yeah, machine learning was a big topic.
So everybody that's working in the Learning Club is using different technologies. So what type of technologies and tools do you use when you participate in the activities?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I'm specifically been working in R, and it's one of the first languages that I got exposed to, both R and Python, but I had a project while I was in my graduate program that was done purely in R. And so I just used that as a jumping point, and I stuck with it. And to this day, I haven't really encountered a data-related problem that I haven't been able to solve within R. And so I use primarily R, and I can go into specific packages if you like, but for visualization
sure. What are some
and
of
so
your
forth,
favorites?
but R is pretty much. ggplot2 is definitely for visualization a big one, and tidyr is a package that I learned about just recently. That's really great for data manipulation and cleaning. And dplyr is another one that's very similar, but also very popular. Yeah, those are just some of the basic ones. But
so what are specific things that you've gained from doing this kind of in a public forum? Have you gained from interacting with other learners or presenting your work a certain way?
Yeah, definitely. That's also a good point to mention too. One of the things I guess that was interesting to me over the last couple of months was just getting feedback from other members in the other members. That it just kind of made me more accountable for some of the work that I put in for the assignment submissions. So one example is one member expressed an interest of, I initially wanted to work with one particular data set, and then because I was trying to catch up in some of these assignments, I kind of ended up transitioning into a different data set because I encountered some problems. And anyways, I mentioned it kind of passively in my assignment submission, and one of the other members kind of called me out on it and said, hey, by the way, whatever happened with this data set? Did you find out what was the error? And I had kind of made a mental note to go back to it, but that just kind of made me, again, like I said, a little more accountable for going back and figuring out, because it wouldn't not only be helpful for me, but also it would probably be helpful to someone else, and someone else was expressing interest. So that's sort of that kind of collaboration really takes it a notch further than just kind of completing assignments on your own and submitting them. So that's definitely been very beneficial and great to have.
Okay, great. So what are some other resources you've used outside of the links from the Data Science Learning Club that you recommend to other new learners to access when they want to learn how to do these activities?
Yeah, I want to say DataCamp. I hadn't heard about DataCamp until joining the Data Science Learning Club, and that was actually a very, very useful for also tying back into the machine learning. I went through some of those exercises, and that was very useful. And for me in particular, I like sort of having that immediate feedback. So there, the way they kind of structure some of the topics is you listen to a short video clip, and then you move on to an assignment that illustrates some of the topics that they covered, and you get to submit your code immediately, and then it's a pass or fail. You get instant feedback. So I tend to like kind of just getting more hands-on and just how do I run this line of code, and so that was very helpful for me. So I would definitely highlight that one, like towards the top. Other specific ones, I can't think of any other right now off the top of my head.
Okay. And what other learning resources have you used to practice or learn data science type of techniques before the Learning Club? I know you had mentioned some to me in an email that you've used otherwise.
Yeah, Codecademy was kind of for me my kind of starting point, kind of similar in terms of having a local environment to that of DataCamp, where you have a local session of R or Python or whatever, what have you. And I'm sure a lot of people are actually very familiar with this, but that was especially useful for me early on because I had no prior programming experience. So that was a great sort of segue into some of the more advanced topics and tools that are in the data science.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any general advice for people that want to learn data science or people that are considering joining the Data Science Learning Club?
Yeah, I think definitely the first thing that comes to mind is just, you'll get out of it as much as you put in. And And so definitely encouraging those who are really motivated to do something in the data science field to just keep pushing your limits, and I think you'll be pleased with what you get, because that's kind of what I've been doing. Is just there's been a lot that I didn't know from the very beginning, and I'm sure there's a lot that I still don't know, but over the years I know I have progressed very far just by just continuing to put enough effort and continue pushing the boundaries of what you already know and not get comfortable.
Great. So I'll definitely add some links to the post that goes along with this podcast. But how can people find you online that are listening and want to follow what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and I do have a GitHub account, and I have a personal website that's kind of under, still it's up there, but I still haven't defined exactly what I want it to be. So I can give you the link to that. And so mostly LinkedIn is usually the best way to get a hold of me. I do have a Twitter also, so.
Okay, great. And we'll link to all of those. So to wrap up, what are your goals and what do you hope to get out of the Learning Club in the end?
Just as I've already began doing the last couple months, I just want to continue touching on the areas that I either have no experience yet working with, like, for example, going back to the machine learning, just to familiarize myself with some of the other very popular tools that, again, I just have no experience with working with, and trying to continue to shorten the list of tools that I'm unfamiliar with and expand on what I do know already. So.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for talking with us today, Anthony.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you again for having the podcast and everything that you do to make it possible.
Great. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.